My name is Philip McKinley. I'm chaplain here in the Interfaith Centre in the Glasnevin campus of DCU. I was at a launch of a report last Thursday on young people and a massive big piece of sociological research, and what they found is that attitudes to faith among young people in Ireland are higher than they are and more positive than they are in England, Scotland and Wales. There is no doubt, following the clerical abuse scandals, that that is a huge factor in attitudes towards church and religiosity. But sometimes it's also important that that's something distinct from faith and a relationship with God. So by and large, it actually found that Ireland, although yes, 18 to 25-year-olds have the lowest levels of religious practice, but it's probably been that way for a long, long time. And there's a whole variety of reasons for that. But in terms of, do young people still pray? Is there a concept or an engagement with the idea of God and spirituality and faith? Those things are still strong according to this research. I kind of don't really think that way. There are probably religious people that would say yes and religious people that say no. It's a complicated issue because all religious affairs journalists have to justify their role. There's constant scrutiny as to why they need to continue. Therefore, they always have to come up with something that has a little bit of, maybe is a bit more juicy, and your day-to-day positive experiences sometimes are just not captured. I mean, think of the Apollo House incident. It was a takeover by a number of musicians that took over a house in city centre Dublin, an AMA building, and gave it over for homelessness to try and highlight the work of this crisis around homelessness. It was big for a week. It was in the newspapers, all the front page, all the celebrities singing songs and doing different things. But what I'm very proud of is that without any PR, every day of the week, when it is cool and when it's not cool, you have the Simon community, you have the Merchants Quay project, you have Focus Ireland, you have the Capuchin Day Centre feeding the homeless. So in terms of the contribution, look at the number of faith-based organisations that are making massive, Peter McVerry Trust, massive contribution to homelessness without front page newspaper. But that's sometimes because it's not for the glory, it's not for the kudos, it's not the 1 week flash in the pan, it is this long-term thing. So that's not captured well in the Irish media, but I think people can see beyond that, and also that's the true work, that's the roll up the sleeves and lifetimes work, and that's perhaps not always captured. But I think you can get into a paranoia if you start thinking about biases or non-biases. I think that's an artificial binary question, and whatever lecturer set that for you was seeking reductionist constructs, and I think I'm going to now break those reductionist constructs by saying there are what is secular, what is religious. I have problems with religiosity, and I am a religious chaplain, supposedly, and there are great parts of secularism that I think are incredibly important and incredibly healthy. Should the Irish government be secular? Absolutely. Should the European Union be secular? Absolutely. Should the United Nations be secular? Absolutely. Because you must have, it's fundamental to a modern democracy that you have neutral, non-religious, that you have this just common ground that religious and non-religious people can all share, especially in a modern secular democracy like we have. This university, therefore, is secular. Every university in Ireland is secular. It was in the Universities Act in 1907. They were all made secular. So there are really, really important parts of secularism that are very, very healthy to have, that you, in a modern democracy, you must have. On the other hand, take, for example, England, or the United Kingdom, but England, which has much lower levels of religious practice to Ireland. So Ireland and Poland still have, even though we've had a decline in religious practice, we still have actually quite high levels of religious practice on a European basis. But England has a very, very low level, much, much lower than Ireland. But even so, look at their last number of prime ministers. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Theresa May. Gordon Brown, Tony Blair founded the Tony Blair Faith Foundation. Gordon Brown, has contributed hugely to religious political dialogue. Theresa May is somebody who's very open and articulate about their faith. Even this guy Gregg, who was the former leader of the Liberal Democrats. So in the highest levels of political life, you have deeply religious people. So secular, non-religious, much less religious societies like England and the UK still have, religious people can still play a completely full and active role. So it's artificial to say what's religious and what's secular. Actually, there's a much deeper collaboration between the two. Secular comes from the Latin word saeculum, which means the richness of our age. It, in its origins, is not an anti-religious concept. It's a plurality. It's a diversity concept. So good secularism means everyone should be able to flourish in good secularism. It's a misuse of the term when it's about anti-clericalism, or it's about anti-religious and about driving. And also, you've got to be really careful when you try and remove religion from the public square. You also create a vacuum, a moral vacuum, and you've got to ask yourself what's replacing that moral vacuum. You just say, no, we don't want this, we don't want this, we don't want this. We don't want our children to know about Buddhism and Hinduism or whatever. You've got to ask yourself, well, what do you want your children to know about? So there's a side of secularism that I see as extremely important, vital, and another side that can be interpreted. If it's interpreted incorrectly, it can be problematic. Is that all right? Sorry, I went all over the place, lads.